I think we should begin. Thank you all for joining the Retail Energy Storage New York City Block 5 funding reallocation proposal that we'd like to present to our stakeholders. In attendance right now from the NYC side, I'll go on camera, sorry about that. You have myself, David Sandbank, from the New York City office. We have Shyam Mehta as well on the storage DER team. You have Jim Hastings and Luke Forster as well from our side of the shop that are going to be here to help us answer questions and present as well. I'm going to hand, when I'm finished with this brief intro, the mic over to Shyam, and Shyam's going to take us through the entirety of this PowerPoint. I think what you're going to find here is that we are an open book. We are going to be very transparent in this presentation as far as what we're thinking. This is a very narrowly focused presentation topic. It's going to be all about retail energy storage. That's projects up to 5 megawatts in the SIR. And it's also in a very specific region, which is Con Ed, New York City. And within the presentation, you'll see why it's focused to that region with some data behind that. This again is only about the roadmap, what we call 1.0 portion. For those of you who could use a reminder, roadmap 1.0 is about 310 million in funding. If you include the 40 million that we use for RPS funds early on to pair with solar and storage upstate, then it's 350 million. And that 350 million was to get us to 1.5 gigawatts by the end of 2025. So we're going to go through that budget with you and talk to you about why we have extra money right now and what we'd like to do with it. And then obviously we're going to stick around for questions, and we should have plenty of time. The PowerPoint isn't a ton of slides. It's going to be very direct and informative. So I'm going to hand the mic over to my colleague Shyam, and Shyam will take us from here. Thank you.
Thanks, David, and good afternoon, everybody. As David said, my name is Shyam Mehta. I'm an assistant director at NYC and part of the distributed energy resources team, along with David, which includes energy storage and New York Sun. So if we can move to the next slide, just to go through the agenda for today's webinar, we're going to start with providing some background with regard to the 2018 storage order programs, which we informally are referred to as Roadmap 1.0 programs, and the funding and the programs that are authorized by that order, and the allocations, the segment-specific allocations that came out of that order. We'll then talk about where we are today with regard to the status of those funds in terms of what has been already committed / allocated and what is unallocated / unspent. And then that takes us into the proposal we have for spending that unspent money, which is, spoiler alert, to appropriate that funding for a new New York City retail storage funding block, New York City Block 5. We'll then talk about some proposed design and program requirements pertaining to this proposed new block, as well as the proposed incentive rate and the likely capacity allocation that would come out of this block. And then finally, we'll talk about some next steps in the process here, as well as take questions at the end, which you can type into your console, in your WebEx console at any time, and will be monitored and captured by NYC staff. So if we could move to the next slide, just beginning with some background around what we're talking about here, what funding we're talking about here. So as I mentioned, the 2018 storage order, which again, is commonly referred to as the Roadmap 1.0 order by the New York Public Service Commission, authorized NYC to use a total of 310 million for what is called the Energy Storage Market Acceleration Bridge Incentive Programs. This is the first suite of energy storage incentive programs that were authorized by the PSC, and that is, as David mentioned at the top, that is not inclusive and additive to that 40 million of CEF funding that was separately approved by the Public Service Commission for paired solar and storage projects that made up the initial rest of state blocks. If you were there at the time, you may recall, they may ring a bell. So and the incentives provided that under this program, the Market Acceleration Bridge Incentive Program, they specifically supported the bulk sector as well as the what we call the retail commercial sector for energy storage. So the bulk being large-scale projects connected to the transmission system, and then retail commercial being distribution-connected projects, both behind the meter and front of the meter. And these projects were the projects that we supported by this incentive program would need to be deployed between 2019 and 2025 because of the towards supporting New York's 2025 target of deploying 1.5 gigawatts of energy storage by the end of 2025. So in terms of the allocations that were determined under the Market Acceleration Bridge Incentive Program, the last time that an implementation plan was updated back in 2020, $150 million were allocated towards bulk storage. And that includes approximately $68 million that were allocated and committed for the utility bulk dispatch rights RFPs, which are still ongoing and active. We've gone through a few rounds that hasn't resulted in any procurements, but those RFPs and procurements are still ongoing. In addition to that 150 million, there was 124 million allocated for retail storage incentives, which again does not include that 40 million that I mentioned of previously approved CEF funding for paired solar and storage projects. And then $36 million was set aside as what was called quote unquote unallocated funding, not allocated at the outset to either retail or bulk segments, basically tactically support additional opportunities based on the experience we had in terms of implementing these programs and market conditions at that time. So if we can move to the next slide. So this table basically represents where we are today when it comes to the current status of these Roadmap 1.0 funds. And so you can see three categories here that I just went over: bulk storage incentives, retail storage incentives, and unallocated funding. And what you can see from this table is that when it comes to the bulk storage incentive program, the majority of funding has been allocated, is currently still allocated. We have about 16.5 million that is currently uncommitted that resulted from project attrition / cancellations in our pipeline over the last a few years. Similarly, with the retail storage incentives that I mentioned, approximately $124 million was allocated as of the filing of the last updated implementation plan back in 2020. Of that, about $97.7 million has been committed to projects, and which leaves about a little over 25 or almost $26 million in unallocated retail storage incentive. Again, similarly, coming from projects that basically canceled that were previously awarded retail storage incentives. And then that unallocated funding category of initially 36.4 million has seen $25 million of allocations to both bulk and retail storage projects since that category was first created, leaving about $11.4 million of uncommitted and available funding from that category. So in total, that means that we have $53.8 million in uncommitted and available funding from Roadmap 1.0 programs, not including, again, the $68.2 million that is still held in reserve by NYSERDA, and that is allocated towards the utility bulk dispatch rights RFPs. Can we go to the next slide? So that basically takes us to what the reallocation proposal is when it comes to how to use these unspent funds from the 1.0 programs. And again, as mentioned in the title of this presentation, the NYSERDA's proposal is to reallocate that nearly $54 million in available 1.0 funding towards an additional block of standard offer fixed rate incentives for retail commercial projects deployed in New York City. So the natural questions are, why retail and why New York City? And we can talk through those individually. So in terms of why the focus on retail versus bulk, Basically, we've learned some, frankly, painful lessons from the 1.0 bulk program in terms of implementation experience, and the feedback we've received from the industry since then as well, which clearly indicate that as far as the bulk projects are concerned, projects that participate in NYSO markets, they are best supported not via a fixed rate standard offer one-time payment incentive, but rather via long-term contracts and an index incentive that provides a hedge to developers. And that is reflected in the DPS NYSERDA published 2022 energy storage roadmap, also known as Roadmap 2.0, that was filed at the end of 2022, that is still awaiting commission ruling. And we've proposed there, some folks may be familiar with this concept of the index storage credit that basically solves many of the problems associated with the previous bulk storage regime. So we really don't think it's a good use of money to reappropriate this money or for another standard offer fixed rate bulk storage incentive. And really the future of bulk storage support, financial support will be a matter that is taken up through the adoption or ruling on roadmap on the 2022 6 gigawatt roadmap. So that is the reasoning for why retail. As far as why New York City, there are multiple reasons for why we believe New York City is the best location for these funds to be deployed. Number one, we believe it's the highest value location for energy storage deployment in the state, both from a purpose of reliability as well as peaker displacement benefits. Number two, the New York City pipeline has a significant volume of shovel-ready projects that have made both their full interconnection payment as well as have gone through, many have gone through the local permitting process or are advanced in that process. So as of the end of last year, there was a little more than 130 megawatts in the interconnection queue that had made 100% interconnection payments. Number three, New York City does have at this time a more expedient siting and permitting pathway and process for energy storage, or more specifically battery storage projects. And so we do believe that the projects in New York City do have, all else equal, have the highest likelihood of actually being built by the end of 2025 and actually supporting the 1.5 gigawatt by 2025 target that the 1.0 program incentives were specifically implemented to support. And then finally, folks may be familiar that we have had multiple batteries, energy storage related fire incidents last year. And so the interagency fire safety working group that is ongoing has issued recommendation and will be issuing further recommendations regarding a whole bunch of standards and regulations and best practices. And as far as New York City is concerned, we believe that the FDNY's oversight of battery storage and its regulations are a national benchmark for fire safety risk mitigation. So in terms of capturing those recommendations and capturing the work of the fire safety group, we believe that FDNY's oversight does have that covered for most part. The 2.0 programs will likely have additional fire safety measures programmatically that reflect the recommendations of the fire safety working group. If we can move to the next slide. So we've talked about the basic proposal, around New York City Retail Block 5. The next couple of slides detail some program design requirement proposals, as well as the question of the incentive rate and capacity allocation. So let's start by talking about program design. So number one item here is the megawatt hour, the system megawatt hour cap for incentive eligibility. If you were part of the previous retail incentive blocks that were part of the 1.0 programs, you know that those incentives were capped at a total of 15 megawatt hours of project capacity. So in other words, if you were a 20 megawatt hour project and you received an incentive of $100 a kilowatt hour, your total incentive was capped at $1.5 million, because only that quote unquote first 15 megawatts of your project capacity was eligible for the incentive. And that was based on a determination at that time that 15 megawatt hours really was the sweet spot and the representative project capacity as far as retail storage was concerned. We've now seeing a shift towards 20 megawatt hours, 5 megawatts, 4-hour duration that we believe to be more representative of the current reality as well as as well as the future. So based on that, we are proposing increasing this 15 megawatt hour cap to 20 megawatt hours to align with what the likely projects in the New York City Block 5 pipeline. Second point is around maturity requirements. Here we're maintaining the same maturity requirements, so the same proposed maturity requirements we did with New York City Block 4, which is that projects will need to have made their 100% interconnection upgrade payment. So this is the same as before. One important thing to note here is that projects that previously received a retail storage incentive under a previous New York City block, 1, 2, 3, or 4, they would not be allowed to cancel and reapply for the block 5 incentives. And when I'll talk about the incentive rate, the rationale for this will become quite clear. Point number 4 in terms of program design is with regard to application ordering. So given that it's been quite some time since we've had incentives on the street, we've seen quite a robust volume of pent-up demand or pipeline of eligible projects in the interconnection queue. And so it is quite possible that there will be more eligible applications than there is funding for Block 5. So in that event, we would be doing something very similar that we did with the relaunch of the New York Sun program back in 2022, which is that if we have more complete and eligible applications that are received in the first 14 calendar days, the first 2 weeks of the opening of Block 5, then there is total funding available for. We will reorder the applications by the actual date of the 100% or full utility interconnection payment, and then award Block 5 incentives in that order. And then finally, with regard to in-service date requirements, as I mentioned before, the 1.0 programs were explicitly implemented to support the 2025 target of 1.5 gigawatts. And so Block 5 projects must target completion or in-service by December 31st, 2025 to support that target, barring any corrective action taken by the Public Service Commission to extend this date based on its triennial review of the 1.0 programs, which was also included in the 2022 roadmap. Moving to the next slide, we will talk about the questions, the topic of incentive rate and capacity allocation for Block 5. So just some background in terms of a frame of reference. So way back in July 2021, which is the last time we had an active New York City retail block on the street, that rate for Block 4 was set at $100 a kilowatt hour and capped at 15 megawatt hours of project capacity. So in the 3 year or 2.5 years since that block was launched, we've done extensive market monitoring. We've engaged with a variety of stakeholders and developers that are active developing retail storage in New York City. And what we've seen is that there are some key inputs that are affecting project economics and project costs. There have been changes in a variety of key inputs that affected those costs. And in some cases, those changes have reduced costs and improved project economics. And in the others, they've actually increased cost and challenged project economics. And so specifically, since July 2021, we now have, through the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act, the available of a federal investment tax credit for standalone storage, which we didn't have before. It's 30%, assuming that either prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements are satisfied or the project is exempt from those through grandfathering clause. We've also seen, since 2021, we've seen battery pricing for lithium-ion increase significantly, but then come back down starting in 2023. So for some projects, at least, they are seeing battery pricing that is less than what it was in July 2021. Not entirely the case, but at least for some projects. However, those improvements in inputs have been mitigated, we've learned, by increases both in the balance of system components, so everything except the battery pack, as well as labor. So you can put these two into the category of non-battery pack EPC. So non-battery pack EPC costs have increased significantly, is what we've seen, primarily as a function of inflation, but then also limited availability for the kind of specs of equipment needed to satisfy the interconnection configurations required for New York City. And then interconnection costs themselves have increased significantly. And that is primarily driven by the saturation of the low-hanging fruit of of interconnecting to the overhead non-network in places like Staten Island and the Bronx. Those locations which had much lower interconnection costs are now pretty much saturated. And so now we see projects trying to take service under different configurations, which have much higher interconnection costs associated with them. So based on everything we've learned, based on our typical missing money analysis that we do to determine the needed incentive rates, based on conversations with many active New York City retail developers, we believe that the appropriate rate for Block 5 is $125 a kilowatt hour. Again, that is capped at a project capacity of 20 megawatt hours. So again, if you're a 20 megawatt hour project at $125 a kilowatt hour, that would be a total incentive payment of $2.5 million. And we believe that will enable a significant volume of the projects that are likely to participate in this proposed Block 5 to be economically viable. And so then the remaining question is, how many projects is Block 5 likely to support? Well, that ends up being a function of what we end up seeing in terms of the average duration profile, which we do believe will be and end up being between 3 hours and 4 hours. And based on where we land in terms of that duration profile, we estimate that $53.8 million will end up supporting anywhere between 110 megawatts to 150 megawatts of additional capacity. One thing I will say here is that, or I should have said in the previous slide, is that I mentioned that in terms of maturity requirements, projects will need to have made their 100% interconnection payment, and we will also be ordering based on the date of that payment if there is more demand for the incentive than available supply. Having said that, just based on what we're seeing in the pipeline today of eligible projects in New York City, it is, I would not say it is highly likely that making a 100% payment now will put a project in line to receive Block 5 funding, just because of the amount of pent-up eligible demand we see there today. It's not impossible, but there are going to be likely a lot of projects ahead of you if you pay if you put down your 100% deposit today in response to this webinar. So that's just one thing I wanted to flag. Moving on to the next slide. So in terms of next steps here, following this webinar, we will be accepting feedback from stakeholders on any of the items that are proposed in this webinar for up to 1 week after this webinar. So up to next Thursday, you can contact my email, shyam.mehta@nisera.ny.gov to submit your feedback. I should mention that comments may be publicly posted or shared, so please do not include any confidential or proprietary information in your comments or feedback. Following that stakeholder feedback period, we will then, with our DPS colleagues, review all the feedback we received and use that feedback to inform a final decision with regard to this proposal. And then once that decision is reached, we will file an updated energy storage market acceleration bridge incentives implementation plan, as well as program manual to reflect the decision taken and the specifics thereof. And you will find these both. You will find the program manual on NYCERDA's website, but you will also find it in, that, as well as the updated implementation plan in the energy storage case docket, which is 18-E-0130. And we will also be notifying stakeholders by email regarding the decision taken and the details of that decision, as well as the likely timing for an incentive block opening if that is the decision. Two things at the end to flag with regard to this proposal. One is, if you are a developer that believes that you can participate in Block 5, if you have not already been approved as a participating retail storage contractor, please do so as soon as possible. There is an online form essentially that you'll have to complete, which you can access through our retail energy storage incentive webpage. And then if you are on already approved participating contractor, just flagging that you may need to sign an updated contractor participation agreement, um, even if you have previously done so. So please reach out to NYSERDA's energy storage program to clarify that matter and whether you might need to sign one at the right time. With that, I think we are at the end of the presentation content for today. So we can turn to Q&A if we have questions. So if you can just give me a minute or so to look at the questions that have been teed up, I'll be right back. Okay, thank you for bearing with me for a minute. So we do have 7 to 10 questions at this time that I'll try to answer it to the best of my ability. So the first one that I'm seeing is, do you have an understanding of how long interconnection is currently? Well, I think the right answer is that it's a range and it varies quite significantly based on the individual project. This is public data that you can see on a project specific basis from the publicly listed interconnection queue inventory data. Please reach out to us if you do not, if this reference to the interconnection queue data does not ring any bells, and we can point you to that. We have heard from a few developers that utilities are getting better at turnaround times for these user studies, but there is a meaningful time lag in procuring interconnection equipment on the utility side. The second question I'm seeing is, when is Roadmap 2.0 expected to roll out? So that is a matter that is really in the hands of the Public Service Commission at this time. We cannot predict the timing of an order. And again, nothing in this webinar pertains specifically to Roadmap 2.0 programs, just important to clarify. We're talking about really Roadmap 1.0 programs and Roadmap 1.0 funding. And so we are hopeful for an order this year, but I cannot give you any specifics when it comes to the likely timing for a ruling. Next question is, please confirm permits are not required to reserve Block 5 capacity as proposed. It's site control and 100% interconnection payment. That is correct. The fourth question is, what does New York City Block 5 stand for? Does it just mean Con Ed? And what zones/territories is this block for? So the reason we call it Block 5 is that we've already had 4 previous blocks of incentives in the New York City Retail Energy Storage Incentive Program, and this will be the 5th. And again, it's important to clarify here that this block is specifically meant for projects that are sited in New York City. So in other words, it does not include Westchester. The next question is around minimum and maximum system sizes. So I presume, what are the minimum and maximum system sizes? There is no eligible minimum system size. The maximum system size, as governed by the standardized interconnection requirements in New York State, is currently 5 megawatts AC. So and that is, again, that comes from the SIR. Our program requirements are aligned with that. And in terms of, again, I'll mention again, in terms of incentive, what the maximum incentive allowable incentive is, it is capped at a assumption of a project size of 20 megawatt hours. So in theory, again, if you had a 25 megawatt hour project at a $125 a kilowatt hour, you would still get the same incentive as a 20 megawatt hour project, which would be $2.5 million. I hope that makes things a little clearer. Next question is, are prevailing wages going to be a requirement under Block 5? Not programmatically from NYSERDA. So, and this is a good question, a good clarifying question, because we have, it is the roadmap 2.0, the 2022 roadmap, or the 6 gigawatt roadmap did propose payment of prevailing wage as a programmatic requirement for all projects above 1 megawatt AC. However, the Block 5 would be funded through roadmap 1.0 funding, which did not have prevailing wage requirements associated with that. That said, developers may be required to pay prevailing wage to receive the 30% ITC, the federal ITC. Another question I'll take, and I'm seeing questions coming in thick and fast. So I'm just going to do a little bit of filtering here. Will the updated implementation plan or program manual include information for new retail incentives beyond New York City Block 5? I.e. the retail incentives described in the 2022 storage roadmap? No, it will not. There will need to be a separate implementation plan as well as program manual filing for incentives that are authorized via the adoption of the 2022 storage roadmap, if it is adopted by the commission. So no, we will not, whatever I mentioned in terms of filing an updated IP or program manual will, as part of this process, and this round of incentives or New York City Block 5 will only be specific to Block 5. Next question. It seems that this is all the funding we will expect to see for storage in New York. Is there any chance we will see a Con Ed Westchester retail storage incentive or a Con Ed residential storage incentive? So that really is what the roadmap 2.0 or the 2022 roadmap or the 6 gigawatt roadmap is about. So, just as a reminder, that roadmap was filed by DPS and NYSERDA to chart a pathway towards an expanded energy storage deployment target of 6 gigawatts by 2025, and proposed new incentive programs for bulk storage, retail energy storage, as well as residential storage. Specifically 1,500 megawatt retail storage program across the state and 200 megawatt residential storage across the state. So again, depending on, we'll have to wait for the commission's ruling on this with regard to this filing and this proposal. But that is the venue for which new incentives for Westchester, both and Con Ed residential, as well as rest of state retail and residential, would be taken up. Next question is, are projects in New York City that are in PSEG Long Island service territory eligible? No, the utility must be Con Ed, and that's a good clarifying question. So when we say New York City, we really mean Con Edison, New York City. The project must be located in one of the 5 New York City boroughs, and the utility must be Con Edison. Next question is, will the portal and application process be the same as Block 4, i.e. we upload docs and submit through that portal? The answer is yes. It's the same process through Salesforce. You must be approved as a participating NYSERDA contractor to submit applications, which is why I said if you haven't already done that, and now would be the time to actually get that process rolling. What is the estimated timeline for release of the new block? It's difficult to provide an exact number here. Typically, so I did outline the next steps here in that, we're going to give 7 days for stakeholder feedback. We're then going to review that feedback towards making a final decision with DPS with regard to this proposal. And then once that's done, we'll be filing the updated implementation plan and program manual relating to the utilization of this funding. And then I imagine it would be probably 3 to 4 weeks roughly to operationalize that new block and also do the necessary notifications to contractors. So very roughly, don't hold me to this, I would say between 4 to 6 weeks after this webinar. Next question I'm seeing is, any sense for Con Edison incentive levels for round 2? I'm not sure what round 2 means here, but I would presume it means after block 5. So again, my answer is the same, is that is a matter for that is under the purview of roadmap 2.0. And again, if you're interested in knowing the future of the retail program, whether it's New York City or outside New York City, beyond New York City block 5, you should be paying attention to the proceedings as relating to the roadmap 2.0. And again, we are awaiting a ruling from the Public Service Commission, and we do expect it this year. And I think the last question that I'm seeing that hasn't been answered is, when is the earliest that a shovel-ready project that has paid its 100% interconnection fee can go into service and receive this incentive? So I think what this question is getting at is, so we do require a minimum maturity threshold. Is there a maturity threshold beyond which we would not actually fund, beyond which a project would not be eligible? So I believe the existing program manual does specify that the project can't actually have been placed in service at the point at which it applied for the incentive. So that is what we continue to hew to, in that, if you're already placed in service, if you're already up and running, operational in the market, then you would not be eligible for an incentive here. I think that is all the questions that I'm seeing at this time. So unless my colleagues have any other questions that they saw that I didn't, that they want to take on, I think we are at the end here.
Yes, Shyam, it appears that way. You've
Okay,
gone
great.
through everything really well.
Okay, great. So again, if we can just go back to the next step slide that was right before this one. I'll just remind everybody again, please email shyam.mehta@nisra.ny.gov if you have any feedback with regard to any of the proposals in this webinar. We will keep that open for seven days, calendar days, and then we'll review all the feedback received. And then you should expect to see a notification if you're part of the energy storage mailing lists. If you're not, I highly encourage doing that so you can stay in the know here. And so you'll be informed of the final decision around this matter through that process, or through that notification, following which we will then get to work on all the other procedural steps necessary to operationalize this block if that is the decision taken. So thank you very much, and hope this was informative, and have a good rest of your day.